Is it just for optics then when we see how many loopholes that are there on?
Well, it's not even about the loopholes, it's just for optics, full stop. Maria summed it up there. The public outcry is why this is happening. The case number of imported cases since the start of this last March is less than 1%. At the moment, we have, I think, 57 imported cases. The figures came out from the HBSC in the last 20 minutes, but we have, I think, a grand total of 57 out of 7,597 cases in the country. So if we were to pull up the drawbridge and stop all travel to and from the island, it doesn't mean that COVID will go away. It means we'd have 7,522 cases instead of 7,597. That's where the facts and the data are, and we've heard Leo Varadkar, Micheál Martin, Stephen Donnelly all saying the data doesn't support that imported cases are a major source of infection. But unfortunately, we got overtaken by events. Emer, January, everybody remembers those scary 3 weeks. The grand total cases went from 100,000 to 200,000. Everybody looked around. The enemy is invisible. And instead, they turned on this issue, which no other European country is doing. Cyprus did it for UK arrivals as a reciprocal measure. Hungary did it for UK arrivals. Norway does it if you're not a Norwegian citizen. Remember, most of the people coming into Dublin Airport are not foreigners. They're Irish people returning home that are trying to get back in their dribs and drabs. And Iceland, if you don't have a local address, you must be doing this. And Norway have it, as I said, for Norwegian citizens. We're the only one. We have a media sovereignty issue anyway, that a lot of people watch Sky News. So once Boris Johnson brought it up for his own reasons, there is a very anti-immigrant feeling there. The pressure came on Irish politicians to do so, and sadly they caved into that pressure. The other thing, another very important point that seems to have been missed, is that we have had self-isolation since last March. Everybody arriving in the country, Irish or not, is required to self-isolate for 14 days. And that over that period of time, about 12,000 people have had no address to self-isolate. So they've gone to an Irish hotel, not required to do so. No room came taken away from them. All those sort of regulations that the current arrivals since 4 a.m. this morning are going through. They did it without incident, and the Irish hoteliers gave them the room service and the full hotel service. So there is a pattern where we've been doing this, but what is different now is this heavy-handed, it's mandatory, and the rather controversial way in which both the Garda Síochána and the army were brought into this without really being told what was required of them. They're not entirely happy, but I don't see them having much role in this because the numbers will be very small. Where the numbers will be larger is that if everybody arriving, including the 33 countries, is coming with a negative PCR test, which makes the whole thing shambolic to start with. But if you arrive in Dublin Airport without a negative PCR test, you will also be brought to the hotel until you get that test done. It's hard to see how that will happen because it's being policed rigorously at check-in desks. Most of the complaints I'm getting is not of people getting through without PCR tests, but people turning up with the documentation of PCR tests. Rome is a particular example where this happened, and being told by the check-in people, mainly from Ryanair, you're not getting on the flight because we don't recognise that. The PCR tests carried out by the NHS in England, not recognised by some countries. But people are not getting on flights into Ireland without evidence of the negative PCR. What did happen in January, and the start of this, was about 100 people showed up at Dublin Airport who hadn't evidence of it. I don't know how they got on the flight, maybe an inexperienced check-in person. But if anybody manages to get through that system and into Dublin without evidence of the negative PCR, they're off to the Shawshank Redemption as well. So they're more likely to be the cases we'll see in it. But it's shambolic. It'll do nothing to keep variants at bay, and it'll do nothing to make us safer. Colossal waste of money. The security that's being employed, because the hotel has to devote the whole hotel to their quarantine, the state is paying for the 24-hour security in shifts. the state is paying for the contract for the hotel also covers the state. The hotel employs the security, but the state contract covers it, as it does the transport for the area. It's a colossal waste of resources, headspace, time, and I can see why there's a public outcry. They were sold a pup. They were told this would keep new variants at bay, and this would magic away our existing caseload. It will do nothing of the kind, and in fact it could
educating the public, which takes longer and is a less popular maybe option.
We're fighting travel instead of fighting COVID. It's really crazy.
You mentioned the United Arab Emirates. Just before I get back to Maria, because I'm interested in what you said about trade and the Kilkenny company, are there possible local implications then in terms of business and trade because of this policy?
Yes. Emirates have a huge cargo traffic. They have a cargo freighter coming in by itself, but most of cargo doesn't come on cargo freighters. It comes in a combination of passenger and cargo. So if they reduce their 4 weekly flights, if they cut them completely, because remember, every single passenger, even if they've been in Dubai for 2 hours, even if they're the double vaccinated Dubai people arriving, Irish people mainly arriving back from Dubai, they have to go into this 14-day quarantine. It does raise hellish questions about the viability of the route. If you don't just cut the route in one direction, you don't just cut the route for passengers, you cut it for cargo as well. And that's the bit that about connectivity, I've been talking about this for a long time, that people aren't getting. When you get down to the level of 20 inbound flights a day in Dublin Airport, and you see people on social media saying, why are there any? Once you get below a certain subsistence level, you start hurting bits of the economy that you didn't intend to hurt. And that includes the health service, by the way, because we've a disproportionately high number of non-nationals working in our health service, 43%. You know, when the Italian, Indian and Pakistani doctors and the Filipino nurses and all of that lose that connection with their homeland, it makes it more difficult to operate a health service. It makes it more difficult to operate when people coming in to service a machine have to self-isolate even under the old system. And a lot of them did it in hotels before they could move to work on a machine. And I mean, the power system, the ESB had a couple of problems that had to be surmounted with that before Christmas. So once you get all of those systems under pressure, then your bits of the economy that you did not intend to hurt start to hurt. It's quite interesting. The definition varies from country to country, and for instance, Austria, which is on the red list for us, even despite the fact it's less than 4% positivity from its testing rate, it's one of the few countries, which includes Ireland in Europe, to have that low rate. They have their salons open. What some countries seem to be doing is rapid antigen tests, which really haven't been out. They've been out of the discussion, the narrative here since about last November, using that very effectively. And once people have got a rapid antigen test, they can proceed as normally into things like hair salons and into environments. Not many countries have the full pub environment where everybody's standing shoulder to shoulder around a bar, but hair salons are treated probably more favourably in other European countries. And one of the ways out of our problem, if we have politicians courageous enough to do it in a government which spends most of its time looking over each other's shoulders, is the rapid antigen test solution.